The first thing I noticed wasn't the smell of garlic or the clatter of pans. It was the gleam, like something had been buffed, polished, and placed deliberately under just the right light. And then it hit me. The kitchen was different. New too. New. I froze in the doorway, my hospital wristband still loosely hanging under the cuff of my sweatshirt. It was late March, the air still thin with winter's stubborn chill, and I hadn't been home in 3.5 months. My body was 22, but I felt 70. Thin hair tucked under a knit beanie, cheeks hollow. My bones ached more than they should have. My voice still cracked when I spoke above a whisper. But no one looked at me like I'd been to war and back. They looked at me like I'd walked into the wrong house. "Oh my God, Ava," my mom gasped, setting down a lemon zester like it was part of some cooking show she'd been hosting without me. "You're back early. We didn't know you'd be discharged until Friday." I stepped in, slowly, my boots still damp from the hospital sidewalk, and then I saw them, the cabinets. No longer the cheap chipped particle board I'd grown up with. These were new, soft gray, glossy, with modern gold hardware like the ones I'd pinned in dream boards back when I still believed in things like dream kitchens and a future. "Do you like it?" she asked, beaming, opening and closing drawers, with the exaggerated flair of a real estate agent. "Soft close. Look. No slamming." I didn't answer. The backsplash was different, too. A mosaic of marble and glass tile with delicate veins that glimmered under the new pendant lights. Quartz, countertops, a brushed brass faucet, an espresso machine that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The room felt like a showroom, which meant one thing. Someone had spent a lot of money. I blinked, adjusting to the brightness of it all, and to the cold truth settling somewhere deep in my gut. "What happened to the old stuff?" I asked almost absently. "Oh, we had to. Rip all of it out," Mom said, waving a hand like the very memory was offensive. "It was falling apart, Ava. You know that." I did know that. But I also knew something else. We couldn't afford new. Not unless... Where did the money come from? I asked, though the question tasted bitter before it even left my lips. There was a pause. Just a flicker too long. "Well," Mom said, smoothing her hair. "Some savings. A little help. You know? Family pulling together." My eyes drifted toward the fridge, a gleaming French door model with a digital screen. "Help from who?" I asked. Behind me, I felt the shift in the air. Someone in the living room turned down the volume on the TV. My cousin Taylor's voice stopped mid-sentence. Aunt Denise cleared her throat. That was when I knew. It wasn't said outright. No one had to. The silence screamed louder than words. The GoFundMe, the one my mother had posted just after my diagnosis. "Our brave Ava is fighting a rare and aggressive cancer. We're asking for help with hospital costs, transportation, and basic living. Expenses during this devastating time. Over $80,000 raised. From friends, strangers, old classmates I hadn't heard from in years. They sent messages with every donation. 'You got this, Ava. Stay strong, warrior. For whatever you need, even if it's just groceries.' Groceries. Not backsplashes." I swallowed hard. My legs felt weak, but I didn't want to sit. I didn't want to touch anything in this new, gleaming kitchen that was built on pity. "Your room's all clean for you," Mom added quickly, as if that softened anything. "We washed all your sheets and got rid of that old carpet. You'll feel fresh and..." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked. She blinked. Tell you what? That you were renovating. That you were using the money. I looked her straight in the eye. My cancer fund. Her lips parted like she might deny it. But then she closed them again, and something cold replaced the flicker of guilt in her face. You needed peace and healing, not stress, she said tightly. That money was for all of us, for the family, for the home. Your recovery starts here. I let the silence stretch. I didn't argue, not yet, because I'd just realized something. The kitchen wasn't the only thing that had changed while I was away. So had they. And somewhere under the grief and chemo haze and betrayal, something steadier began to form. A different kind of clarity. Not revenge. Not yet. Just the quiet seed of knowing. This is not over. The next morning, I woke to the sound of laughter. Not the warm kind. The kind that wraps you in familiarity or reminds you of childhood pancakes on Saturdays. No. This was sharp, clipped, like someone laughing to avoid having to explain something. I sat up slowly. My arms trembled from the weight of the movement, my muscles still wrecked from the last chemo round. My throat was dry, not from thirst, from being unwanted. I'd been home less than 24 hours. No one had come to check on me. No one had asked if I needed anything. I was in my own room, the one they'd supposedly cleaned and freshened up. But I didn't recognize it anymore. My posters were gone. The bookshelf now held folded towels. My throw blanket, the one Grandma had crocheted for me when I was 7, was nowhere to be found. It was like I had died, and they were already using my room for guests. Downstairs, Taylor was sitting on the new island stool, legs crossed. Wearing a matching set of silky pajamas like this was her Airbnb. She had a latte in her hand. The machine hissed behind her, sleek and silver, and fully funded by the tumors in my body. "Oh my God, Ava," she said brightly. "You scared me." Mom looked up from the sink. She didn't smile this time. "Morning," I muttered. No one asked how I slept, or how I was feeling, or what it was like to be told I was going into remission and then discharged a week early because the hospital needed the bed for someone sicker. Instead, Mom said, "You're up just in time. We're having a brunch thing." A what? She was already slicing strawberries. "Taylor's boyfriend is coming. And Denise. And some friends from the church board. Just a few people. We've been meaning to show them the kitchen for weeks." I blinked. "You're having a brunch party?" "In your honor," Taylor added quickly. "I mean, not like officially, but everyone's so happy you're home." My mouth opened, then closed. No one asked if I wanted people in the house, if I could handle noise, if I was ready to face questions and pity and fake smiles and awkward hugs from people who donated to the campaign and now probably thought their money had paid for a hospital bed, not an espresso bar. I walked past the island and poured myself some tap water. The faucet sprayed weirdly. Too much pressure. "Oh," Mom said quickly. "Be gentle with that. It's imported." "Right." Later, I sat in the corner of the living room, curled up in a hoodie too big for my thinner frame. My beanie felt hot against my scalp, but I didn't take it off. Not with Taylor flouncing around in her glowing skin and effortless hair. I watched as guests arrived, cooing over the backsplash. "This kitchen is stunning. You must feel like a whole new family." All that love and support really made a difference, huh? Taylor laughed. Denise beamed. Mom smiled and served quiche like she hadn't skimmed off my pain to fund her little comeback. I clenched. My jaw. It wasn't that they'd used the money. It was that they'd celebrated it. Turned my survival into a before and after photo. There was a church friend, someone I didn't even know well, who hugged me too tightly, her perfume choking, and whispered, "God was good to you, Ava. That fundraiser was such a blessing. You've got an amazing family." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. That night, after everyone had left and the new dishwasher purred in the background, I found the GoFundMe login on my old laptop. The password hadn't changed. I read every update my mother had posted, every thank you on my behalf. Every Ava sends love signed during the weeks I couldn't even speak. The most recent update chilled me. We've chosen to prioritize healing the home, while Ava heals her body. Environment matters, and this kitchen is our new heart. My stomach twisted. No mention of how much they'd spent, no receipts, no accountability, just emotional language to keep people from asking where their $20, $100, or $1,000 donations had actually gone. They used my story, my suffering, to fund their renovation. And as I sat there, staring at the dashboard and the totals, the transaction history, something in me hardened. I hadn't just been forgotten. I'd been leveraged, used, and whether they knew it yet or not, I wasn't staying quiet. It started with the comments. The ones they didn't think I'd ever read. I hadn't planned to scroll. I didn't want to relive those days. The chemo weeks, the mornings when I threw up water, the nights where my gums bled and I whispered goodbye into my pillow just in case. But when I clicked on the GoFundMe update tab again, there it was. Over 1,200 comments. Many were old. From when the fundraiser first went viral, the week my mother posted a photo of me unconscious in the hospital bed, oxygen tubes in my nose, hands limp and bruised. I hadn't even known she took that photo. This broke me. Just donated. She looks like a fighter, sending all the love from Iowa. Just lost my sister to lymphoma. Hope Ava pulls through. I swallowed hard. My eyes stung. But then came the recent ones, from after the third update, after the brunch, after the heart of the home line Mom kept repeating like a Pinterest mantra. Glad she's healing. Can't wait to see the new kitchen reveal. Did my donation help pay for that espresso machine? Wait, why is this money going toward home upgrades? Did Ava even approve this? That one hit me like a slap, because the answer was no. No, I didn't approve it. No, I didn't sign off on the spending. No, I wasn't even conscious when most of it happened. I kept reading. Then I found it. A reply my mom had left on a suspicious comment. We discussed every decision with Ava. She was part of the process. She said herself that a peaceful, beautiful home would help her recovery. I actually laughed. Not a happy laugh. Not a relieved laugh. It was dry. Quiet. The kind of sound you make when your chest is too heavy to cry and you need the truth to land somewhere else besides your throat. Because that was a lie. I hadn't even known about the renovation until I walked into it. I never said anything about quartz counters or walk-in pantries. I said I wanted to come home. The next day, I asked Mom directly, "Did you tell people I approved the spending?" We were alone in the kitchen. She was wiping the counter, gently, like it was sacred. She didn't look up. "People ask questions," she said lightly. "Sometimes you just have to say what keeps things calm." What does that mean? It means, she said, finally meeting my eyes. I told them what they needed to hear. And what I needed to hear? I asked. What? About me? Her jaw tightened. You're here. You're alive. That's what matters. I nearly scoffed. Alive but not involved. Alive but lied about. Do you even hear yourself? Her voice rose then, not with rage, with control. Ava, you were sick. We had to make choices. And frankly, I'm a little tired of the attitude. We did the best we could under pressure. No apology, no guilt, just justification. You used my face to raise money, I said coldly. And then you used that money for cabinets, not chemo. Cabinets. Her lips pursed. And would you have preferred the alternative? That we let this place fall apart? That we live like we're dying? I stared at her. A million things in my chest, none of them soft. No, I said finally. I would have preferred honesty. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at my laptop for hours, reading, digging, following donation trails. She'd linked her personal bank account to the fund, transferred lump sums during weeks I was hospitalized. There were Venmo records with payment descriptions like backsplash tile, down payment, fridge, deposit, appliance install. They didn't even hide it. She never thought I'd look. She never thought I'd live long enough to. The turning point came quietly. I found a comment, a long one, from someone named Hannah Rhodes. I didn't know her, but she donated $300, and her words stuck. I know Ava doesn't know, me, but I lost my husband last year. When I read about her story, I couldn't sleep. I just kept thinking, if it were my daughter, I'd want someone to help her live. I'm not rich, but I gave what I could. I only say this because I hope, truly hope, this money is helping her stay alive. Not for counters, not for renovations, for her. I stared at that comment for a long time. Then I screenshotted it. I didn't know yet what I would do with it. But something in me shifted, hardened, focused. Because this wasn't just about money. This was about what it meant to be turned into, a cause, and then discarded like one. You'd be surprised what people leave behind in printers. I wasn't even snooping, not at first. I had gone into Dad's little office cubby to print out my follow-up scan schedule for the oncology center. It was one of those things I used to do without thinking, until hospital routines replaced everything that once felt normal. But there it was, a paper sticking half out the printer tray, an invoice, Brentwood Interiors, full renovation. Summary, paid in full. Nearly $47,000. I stared at it for a long time. My name wasn't on it, but the date was. It was from 2 weeks after I was moved to the ICU for an infection that nearly killed me, and while I was unconscious, they were picking out backsplash samples. That night, I started compiling, quietly. I opened a spreadsheet. Not dramatic, not labeled revenge. Just a clean, quiet document I titled Allocation Records. Line by line, I pulled figures. The GoFundMe campaign, 84,226 hospital receipts I had saved, 9,807 medication costs I'd tracked, 1,110 transportation, 946 the rest? Unaccounted for, but not for long. I searched emails, bank transfers, credit charges on Mom's Amazon account. She never logged out of the family desktop. Appliance orders, interior decorator consultations, She hadn't just spent the money, she'd documented her taste. And it was all there. Timestamps, payment logs, photos. By the end of the week, I had proof that over $70,000 was gone, and the majority of it was in this house. In tile, fixtures, furniture, fake florals, and that espresso machine that hissed louder every morning. I didn't say a word. Not yet, because I wasn't ready to confront. I was ready to control, so I tested the waters. At dinner one night, I asked casually, "Hey, Mom, did we ever send out those handwritten thank you cards to donors?" She looked up from her plate, startled. "What thank you cards?" I tilted my head. "The ones you said you were going to send. To the bigger donors. You know. Just to say we were grateful." "It was your idea." A beat passed. Then two. "Oh." She laughed nervously. "I mean, yeah, well, we posted updates. That was the main thing." Dad didn't look up. Taylor sipped her wine. "No one ever asked for thanks," Mom said briskly. "They were just glad to help. Besides, we were all under a lot of pressure. Let's not dredge it up. Dredge it up. As if this was mud. As if the truth was dirty." Later that night, I DM'd Hannah Rhodes on Facebook, the woman whose comment had haunted me for days. I found her easily. Her page was public. She worked at a florist, widowed, 2 kids. She didn't know me. She probably never expected I'd even read her message. But I typed, "Hi, Hannah. I'm Ava. I just wanted to thank you, truly, for your support during the fundraiser. I saw your comment. It meant more than I can explain. Also, I need to ask something. Did anyone from my family ever contact you personally or send a thank you?" It took a few hours, but then she replied, "Ava, oh my God, I'm so glad you're okay. No one ever reached out. I always wondered if it helped. Not that I needed anything in return, but honestly, I'm so glad to hear from you." I swallowed hard, hands trembling. "Would you be willing to speak to someone about the fundraiser, if I needed to clear something up?" She responded instantly. "Of course, whatever you need. I believed in you, not in a kitchen." And that's when I knew. This wasn't just emotional. This was legal. A week later, I met with a pro bono attorney. I said it was about misused funds. She didn't even blink. Apparently, I wasn't the first person to walk through her office with a family betrayal wrapped in charity. I showed her the files, the transfers, the campaign wording. She listened quietly, took notes, asked only one question when I was done. "Do you want them prosecuted or exposed?" And I said the truth out loud for the first time. I want the people who helped me to know the truth. And I want my family to feel what I felt. Used, unseen, alone. I walked home that day feeling light for the first time in months. Not happy, not whole, but aligned. Because I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw a fit or demand the cabinets be torn out. I was going to make them answer. And I'd let the truth speak louder than I ever could. I didn't announce it with fire. There was no grand confrontation, no shouting in the living room while everyone gasped and dropped their wine glasses. No, I did it the way they never expected, the way they had done everything to me. Quietly. And in public. It started with a new GoFundMe post. Mom had kept the campaign open. She claimed it was in case of future treatment, but I knew better. It still raked in the occasional $20 here and there, enough to fund another bouquet, another charcuterie board. I logged in, heart thudding, and wrote my own update. Not dramatic, just honest. Update from Ava. May 12th. Hi, everyone. Ava here. I want to thank every single person who donated to this fundraiser. Strangers, friends, classmates, old co-workers of my parents. I've read your comments. I've cried over them. I owe my life, quite literally, to your kindness. I also want to clarify something that's been bothering me for months. I did not approve the use of funds for home renovation. I was not consulted. Most of the decisions were made while I was in the hospital, unconscious or recovering. I'm deeply sorry if this is the first time you're hearing this. It is for many of you, and I promise, your donations were not given in vain. They gave me strength, even when I didn't know how to fight. But I believe you deserve to know the truth. Thank you. Ava SI hit post. It went live in seconds. And then I did something terrifying. I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see it unfold in real time. Didn't want to count the views or feel the pressure of messages rolling in. Because this wasn't for me. It was for them, the donors, the strangers who didn't know me but believed in me. I went downstairs for dinner like nothing had changed. The kitchen, my unwilling cathedral of betrayal, still glowed under its gold fixtures. Mom was plating salmon. Taylor was scrolling. Dad sat at the head of the table, quiet as ever. Everything looked the same, except it wasn't. I could feel it in the air. The tremor behind my mother's fork as she passed it to me. The way she avoided my eyes. The fact that Taylor's phone buzzed 3 times before she stood up and walked out to the hall, whispering. They knew, and they knew it came from me. The fallout started slowly. First, 1 comment, then 5, then 50. By morning, the fundraiser was full of reactions. Some shocked, some grateful, some angry. Thank you for your honesty, Ava. You didn't owe it, but you gave it anyway. I feel sick knowing my donation helped pay for a kitchen I'll never see. I hope you get real justice. This happens too often. You deserved better. Is there a way we can request a refund? You're brave, and not just because of the cancer. By the end of the day, the GoFundMe had $2,100 in refund requests. The comment section was locked by the platform, and then the email came from a local reporter. Subject: regarding your fundraiser transparency. Update: Hi Ava, I saw your post and wanted to reach out. Your story is powerful, and your bravery in exposing misuse of funds, even from your own family, is something many people never speak about. If you're open to it, I'd love to talk. No pressure, no angles. Just your voice. Warmly, Clara. Mendez, Senior Reporter, Community Impact News. I didn't reply. Not yet. But I didn't delete it either, because something inside me had shifted. For the first time in months, the shame, the guilt that wasn't even mine, began to fade. At dinner that night, Mom didn't speak to me. Dad cleared his throat once like he might say something. But then he picked up his fork and just kept eating. The silence between us was louder than any of their lies. But I didn't need their conversation anymore. I had the truth. And now, so did everyone else. 3 days passed before she said anything. I had expected a storm, a slammed door, a sobbing confrontation, maybe even a cruel attempt to guilt me back into silence. Instead, there was just absence. No good morning, no text, No dramatic sighs over dirty dishes, just distance, curated and cold. Like I was a problem she hoped would expire on its own, until the fourth morning. I came downstairs and found her at the kitchen table, her laptop open, fingers curled around her mug like it was the only warmth she had left. She didn't look up. "Ava," she said flatly, "can we talk?" I sat across from her, not because I wanted to, but because it felt like the moment I had been walking toward for months, quiet and inevitable. She didn't even wait for me to nod. "You embarrassed this family," she said, voice thin and sharp, like stretched glass. "You humiliated us. You've made it look like we stole from you." I blinked once. "You did." Her eyes narrowed. "We took care of you." "No," I said evenly. "The donors did. The doctors did. The nurses who sat by my bed while you were out tile shopping. They took care of me." Her lips trembled for a fraction of a second before tightening again. "We were under stress," she snapped. "You think this was easy for us? Watching our daughter almost die? You don't know what that does to a parent. You were slipping away, Ava. Every day felt like we were burying you in slow motion." "I know," I said quietly. "But you weren't the one dying." The silence that followed was suffocating. She wiped at her face once, but no tears came. Just pressure, just preservation. "People are asking questions," she muttered. "Your aunt called. Your dad's coworkers are talking. There's a thread on Reddit. Some of the donations are being pulled. This isn't just about you. It's about all of us." I stared at her for a moment that felt too long. Then I leaned forward, voice steady. "Did you ever think," I asked, "that maybe this was always about me? That the tumor growing inside, my body gave you something to rally around, a chance to be the struggling mother with the Pinterest kitchen and the sick daughter who couldn't speak up?" Her face cracked. Just for a second. And I knew I'd hit the place she was trying to bury with subway tile and matching wine glasses. She stood up. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I never wanted it to be like this. I didn't either," I replied. She left the room. The rest of the day unfolded in fragments. I heard her on the phone with someone, maybe Aunt Denise, whispering urgently behind closed doors. Taylor pretended not to look at me, her eyes flicking from her phone to the hallway like she was waiting for someone else to fix it. Dad came home late. His silence was familiar, unmoving. He poured himself a drink and stood in the dim glow of the kitchen, his kitchen, the one I had paid for with my sickness. He didn't say a word, but others did. That night, I opened my laptop and found dozens of private messages, some from donors, some from people I hadn't spoken to in years. One stood out. It was from my high school biology teacher, Ava. I read your update. "I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you. You were the kid who asked too many questions and stayed behind to clean up after frog dissection labs. I donated because I saw you fight, not because of what your mom said. You didn't deserve any of this, and you still handled it with grace. If you ever need anything, letters, references, help getting back to school, I'm here. Keep going. You're the one who matters in this story." I didn't cry, but I sat there in the dark, letting those words settle into the empty places left by my family, because this time someone was speaking to me, not about me, and they saw through everything. In the kitchen, I heard the espresso machine hiss. Then Mom's voice, low and trembling, on the phone. "We may have to shut it all down. I can't take the looks anymore. It's all falling apart." She sounded afraid. Not of me. Of being exposed. Of losing the version of the story she worked so hard to build. I stood at the top of the stairs and watched her shadow move across the floor, and in that moment, I felt no joy, no revenge, no righteous triumph, just a steady, rising truth. This is what the truth does. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just stands still and lets the liars unravel themselves. I hadn't spoken much since the post went live. Not to my mother, not to Taylor, not even to Dad, who had resorted to muttering about weather and grocery lists like that could sweep silence under the fridge. But the rest of the world, they had questions. My inbox had become a confessional, a stream of other people with stories like mine. Misused funds, GoFundMes turned into greed. Daughters who were raised to stay quiet and grateful, even when their lives were collateral for someone else's version of struggle. It was comforting and horrifying. I wasn't alone, and that hurt, because it meant this wasn't a fluke, it was a pattern. Then came the invitation. It was a short email. No fluff, just honesty. Subject: panel invitation. Community accountability. In crowdfunding, Dear Ava, my name is Rima Awan, and I'm a coordinator for a local university panel series on social ethics and community trust. I came across your GoFundMe post and your story. We're hosting a panel on personal fundraising, misuse, and transparency. You wouldn't be expected to do anything you're uncomfortable with. Just speak to your experience, if and only if you're willing. We'd be honored to have your voice in the conversation. Warmly, Rima read it 5 times. I wasn't sure what stunned me more, the fact that people were calling it misuse out loud, or the quiet validation in her tone, not a trace of pity, no emotional bait, just space to speak, without being spoken over. I didn't reply right away. I needed to sit with it. So I went outside, something I hadn't done for more than 5 minutes since I came home. I walked past the renovated porch, the new flower beds that I never asked for, the potted lavender that had replaced Grandma's wild rosemary. The sunlight didn't feel like it used to, but it didn't burn either. I walked until I reached the park 3 blocks away, the one where I used to run laps before the diagnosis, before the fundraisers, before the betrayal. And for the first time in what felt like years, I sat on a bench without checking if I looked sick. I opened the email again, and this time I replied, "Hi Rima, thank you. I'd be honored to share my experience. Just tell me when to show up." I didn't tell my family. They'd hear eventually, the same way they heard about the post, through whispers. Through the small-town rumor mill that only accelerated when a story involved a daughter breaking rank. But I wanted this moment to be mine. I didn't need their permission. I never had. I just hadn't realized that before. The day of the panel, I wore a simple black blouse and jeans, not to look formal, not to impress, but because they made me feel like me again. Not a patient, not a fundraiser, not a pity project in a home makeover. I arrived at the campus 20 minutes early. Rima greeted me at the door. She was younger than I expected, with kind eyes and no clipboard. Just a worn notebook and a soft smile. "There's no pressure," she said. "Just truth." That was all I needed. The panel wasn't huge. Maybe 50 people in the audience, a few reporters, a couple of students live tweeting. 3 speakers beside me. One woman who'd had her crowdfunding stolen by an ex. A man whose community donations were funneled into fake medical expenses, and a quiet dad who'd raised money for his daughter's surgery only to find out the hospital pocketed most of it through admin fees. When it was my turn, I spoke softly, but I didn't stutter. They told me it was for my healing, but I didn't recognize any of it. Not the renovations, not the marble countertops, not the updates written in my name while I was too sick to hold a spoon. I never wanted luxury. I wanted dignity. I wanted help staying alive, not a Pinterest kitchen. They used my pain to build something shiny. But it didn't include me. I was just the excuse. A hush fell over the room. Not uncomfortable. Not dismissive. Just still. Like people were finally listening. Afterward, someone came up to me, an older woman with a scarf around her neck and eyes like she'd watched a few too many dreams get misused. She simply said, "You gave us the words we didn't know we needed." That night, I walked into the kitchen and looked around. Everything still gleamed. The cabinets, the fridge, the underlighting that glowed blue in the corners like a showroom. But it felt hollow now, because no one could polish the truth. And for the first time, it was no longer mine to carry alone. They didn't kick me out, but I left, not with a suitcase slammed shut in anger, not in the middle of a fight, not during a storm of screaming accusations. I just left, because staying was a quieter kind of death, and I'd already survived one. The kitchen was still spotless that morning, like nothing ever happened. I stood there for a minute, fingers grazing the edge of the countertop. The cool, expensive quartz, paid for by strangers who thought they were saving me, not saving aesthetic. Behind me, no one stirred. Taylor had long since stopped speaking to me. She hated how the attention shifted, how her brunch photos got buried by comment threads. She moved in with her fiancé a month earlier, saying she needed space from the tension. Dad barely looked at me anymore. But then again, I couldn't remember the last time he really had. Quiet was his superpower, and his escape. Mom hovered, but never really landed. Some days she cooked and pretended everything was fine. Other days, she sat in the kitchen with an untouched latte and her phone locked on a blank screen. It wasn't guilt, not quite. It was grief, for a version of the story she could no longer control. I left the keys on the table, not out of spite, out of closure, and I walked out of the house I had nearly died trying to return to, not because it was home, but because they had convinced me it was the only place I belonged. But they were wrong. I moved into a little one-bedroom above a bookstore. The landlady liked cats and baked bread at weird hours. The walls were thin, but they were mine. The rent was low. The windows were high. The light felt honest. I got a job at a nonprofit that worked with medical fundraisers. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted to protect someone else's name from becoming a price tag. Sometimes I'd get calls from people who sounded like I used to. Exhausted, embarrassed, afraid to speak. And I'd tell them, ask for receipts. You're not selfish for wanting control. It's your story, not theirs. One day, I got a letter, handwritten, no return address. Ava, I saw the article. I'm sorry. I didn't know what we were doing until it was too late, but I should have stopped it. I should have stopped her. You were always the quiet one. But you were never small. I see that now. Dad, I folded it carefully and put it away. Not because it fixed anything, but because it mattered that someone finally said what I'd always needed to hear. That I was seen. Months passed. People forgot the article. Moved on. The internet found new stories, new villains, new daughters fighting to reclaim something that was never supposed to be taken from them. But I remembered, not out of bitterness, out of clarity, because not all betrayals are loud. Some come with quiet forks, expensive tiles, and the soft close drawer of a mother's unspoken shame. I never sued. I never asked for the money back. What I did was worse. For them, I told the truth, and I walked away, with nothing but my name, and the knowledge that I had won, not by burning it all down, but by leaving them in the kitchen they loved more than me. She built her temple on my pain. I built a life beyond it.